Welcome to episode 57 of the Unstoppable podcast with special guest Marcus Leach. My name is Dan J. Gregory and I am committed to hunting down the secrets of business mastery and human performance. My goal for the Unstoppable podcast is to share insights from some of the most successful entrepreneurs, inspiring thought leaders, world-class athletes and prominent celebrities to help you to become unstoppable in business and life. Each week I'll be bringing you a new interview with an inspiring person and sharing my own results as I pursue the answers to the question, how can I create the ultimate edge in my business, make a significant impact and live an extraordinary life? Welcome to episode 57 of the Unstoppable podcast. I hope you're having a stunning day no matter what time you're listening to the show. I've got a very exciting episode for you today, but before we dive in, let's recap what's been happening over the past couple of episodes. So on Monday, I went incredibly deep and I told you about one of the most difficult yet important conversations that I have ever had in my life, and it truly has had a profound impact on me. So I really encourage you, if there's any area of your life that you're currently not happy with, then I truly believe that's a reflection of what's happening inside of you. So within Monday's episode, I talked about the importance of self-love, and I've asked some really powerful questions of you that will help you to move forward towards your goals. And then last week, our guest interview was with Heather DeSantis, who is founder of Boss Babe PR, who shared exactly how to get media coverage for your business, whether it's local radio or mainstream press. And I've set myself the challenge as a result to get featured in a major media outlet by the end of this month. And I'd love for you to join me on the challenge within your business. And finally, before I tell you all about today's show, I want to direct you to a very special gift that I've put together for you. I've created a PDF of my top 50 lessons from the first 50 episodes of the Unstoppable podcast, which you can download for free right now over at danjgregory.com/50 lessons. That's 50 lessons. danjgregory.com/50 lessons. So pause this episode to go and grab your copy right now, and then we'll dive into the show. Alrighty, on today's show, I've got a hugely inspiring guest for you today. Those of you who are regular listeners of the show will know that I like a good physical challenge, and that this year I cycled from Innsbruck in Austria to Venice in Italy through the Alps. But today's guest has blown my mind when it comes to what is possible. I'm delighted to introduce you to Marcus Leach. Marcus is an adventurer, an inspirational speaker, and a freelance journalist with a simple motto: why live life on the edge when you can jump off it? At the beginning of 2014, Marcus was overweight and unhappy about how he looked, and he made the simple decision to get fit. Little did he know that this decision would change his life beyond recognition. What started out as a quest to get quote-unquote ripped has led to a life of constant adventure in which his main focus is on seeing how far he can push himself both mentally and physically. And in the process, Marcus has inspired thousands around the world to follow in his footsteps. As an ordinary guy achieving extraordinary goals, Marcus believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible in life, both for himself and for others. So in today's episode, Marcus is going to share his tales of adventure and some of his biggest lessons that he has learned from taking on and conquering his major challenges. Get ready to be truly inspired. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to bring you the adventurer, Marcus Leach. Welcome to the Unstoppable podcast. So for my listeners, I know I've just introduced you at the beginning of the show. Would you mind giving us a bit of a frame of reference, your background? Tell us about what you do and what you're all about.
Yeah, of course, no problem. My name's Marcus. I guess the best way to describe myself is an extreme adventurer, inspirational speaker, and freelance journalist. And I guess my focus on life recently has very much been about pushing myself to my limit, seeing how far I can take myself, and in doing so, helping to inspire other people to realize that there's no limits to what we can achieve in our lives.
Amazing. And, you know, Marcus, when Marcus shared his website with me, I said he's like a Tim Ferriss adventurer who substituted red wine for adventure, and he, you know, this really go get it kind of guy who's doing amazing things in the world. So I'm really excited to get into the adventure stuff. I know you and I connected this morning, and I talked about some of the adventures that you've been on. I'm really keen to understand the beginnings. What inspired you to get started on this kind of adventurous lifestyle?
I think if I look back at my life, there's always been an adventure element to it. You know, growing up, we always went on camping holidays, always exploring the great outdoors. And it kind of instilled in me this sense of, you know, there's a big world out there to be seen. But I think from a point of view where it's really become a main focal point of my life, it started about 3 years ago. At the start of 2014, I'd just come back from 5 weeks in India on honeymoon with my wife. I'd enjoyed myself up there. I'd eaten well, to say the least. And I just remember sitting on the plane coming home feeling not great about myself. And I made a decision there and then to do something about it. And I didn't quite know where that decision would lead, but the decision was to get fit, and more specifically to prove a friend wrong who said he bet me that I'd never be able to get a six-pack in life. So I set about it. I set off on what was an 11-month journey from transforming myself sort of from fat to fit, really.
Amazing.
And towards the end of that journey, I started to think about what's the next goal. Because I really believe that whilst it's important to have a goal to be working towards now, we all need something to be focusing on in the future, because otherwise you get to this stage where you achieve your goal and then it's like, well, what next? And I was lent a book by my brother-in-law called No Shortcuts to the Top, by a chap called Ed Vistas. And he's one of the few people in the world to have climbed all 14 8,000 meter plus mountains without supplemental oxygen. And reading that book just made me realize that as great as it was to look good with my top off, and as much as my wife enjoyed that, there was a lot more to life than that. And I was limiting myself and what I could achieve by just focusing on going to the gym. And that's when I just started exploring my options and thinking, okay, what can I do next? And first up was, you know, coming up to December, we were off to France for a month to drive around the Alps. And I'd always wanted to cycle up Alpe d'Huez as a kid. And I thought, well, here's my chance. It's the middle of winter, but hey, what the hell, I'm going to take my bike with me.
Amazing.
And I did. It was December the 14th. There was not a single soul on the mountain on a bike apart from myself. I had a lot of odd looks. It was snowing, it was cold, and it was horrendous. It was an hour and a half of torture. I won't lie, but I got to the top and I just felt amazing for doing it. And I just thought to myself, if I can do that, having not cycled in about 6 years, imagine what I could do if I set my mind to another goal. And from there, it's just kind of led on from there, really, a series of goals that have progressed over the last 3 years, aimed at pushing myself to the limits. The focus for me is very much on cycling and climbing mountains. Couple of things I didn't have a huge amount of experience in, but it's two great ways to challenge myself. And I often look at what I do, and there's great parallels in other areas of life, in business, and in any life goal, and you can relate it back to that sort of a mountain analogy. And when we set ourselves a goal and, you know, we're stood at the bottom of the mountain and the summit or the goal looks an impossible distance away. And yet when we start breaking it down into smaller sub goals, which are manageable and achievable, and we believe we can achieve, we start working towards that. So you think, okay, here's the first step, base camp. You know, from there it's camp 1. On there, it's camp 2, it's camp 3.
Yeah.
And once, you know, you get to the first one, you think, okay, I can do this. I've got to here. I'm going to go to the next one. And you start to build belief in what you can achieve. And before you know it, you're at the final push towards the summit and achieving your big goal. And that's what I sort of, the philosophy I apply to everything I'm doing at the moment.
Amazing. It's such an inspiring story. So what have been, I know you've done some amazing things. You've done some really incredible stuff. What have been some of the biggest challenge that you faced on your kind of adventurous journey?
In terms of the challenge, I think climbing Mount Elbrus was one of the biggest challenges, the highest mountain in Europe. 5,642 meters. That was a serious challenge. But I think some of the biggest challenges I've faced is how I've had to deal with the disappointments of not achieving some of my goals.
Could you elaborate on that? You got some examples?
Yeah, of course. Last year, I entered a bike race called the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is billed as the world's toughest one-day bike event. And
I've heard it's pretty
bear in
vicious.
mind, I'd only been cycling for 6 months. And I just, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. I think if you're going to set a goal, go big or go home sort of thing. So it's 330 kilometers, 8,000 meters of vertical ascent through 3 countries in one day. And it's basically the equivalent of cycling up Mount Everest, 8,000 meters. So it's a serious challenge. And I never for one moment doubted that I wouldn't achieve the goal. I just had this attitude of, I can do it.
Yes.
And yet 200 kilometers in, whilst my mind was still willing to keep going, my body simply said, couldn't turn the pedals anymore, and the challenge was over. And it hurt, and it hurt so much to have to admit defeat. But I think for me, the lesson I learned there was it's not you haven't failed at something. If you give your absolute all in life, if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I gave absolutely everything to this challenge, there's nothing more I could have physically or mentally done, and you don't achieve it, it's not a failure. It just means you're not good enough at that moment in time. And that then gave me the chance to go away and reevaluate. And I had 2 options, really. One was to say I'm not good enough and leave it at that, or 2 was to say, I'm going to reset the goal and come back next year, and I'm going to be fitter, I'm going to be stronger, and I'm going to be better equipped to achieve the goal. And the reason I say it was the biggest challenge I had to face was because I had to live with that emotional pain and hurt for over, for almost 12 months. But I used that pain and suffering to motivate me and drive me forward in everything I did. And I think it was around that sort of time that I started developing this sort of question in my mind, and it's something I guess I'll talk a little bit about later. But it's this question of developing a champion's mindset. And I asked myself the question, what would a champion do? Wow. And what I do is, a prime example of this is I wake up at between 5 and 5:30 every morning to go on my bike on a state-of-the-art training stand to do 2-hour training in the morning. Because if I don't do it then, dad duties and running my own business sort of kicks in, and I don't have the time to do it. And most of the time the alarm goes off, I'm up, I'm out the back door, I'm in the shed, I'm on the bike, I'm training. But there comes a time where there's mornings where I don't want to get up. It's cold, it's dark, it's miserable outside, my bed's warm, and all I want to do is stay in bed. But all I have to do is ask myself the question, what would a champion do?
Amazing.
And I know the answer. A champion would get up, get his kit on, get in the shed and put the time and effort in and train. And that's the mindset that I started to create by asking that simple question. And if you're always asking yourself, what would a champion do? You're always moving towards a champion's mindset and ultimately the life and results that a champion will get.
Do you remember the moment when you kind of developed that mindset? Do you remember the exact time or occasion where that philosophy came into your life? Was there a specific moment that created that ethos within you?
If I look back at my life, I've grown up in a very positive environment over the years. I've had a fantastic role model or role models in my mum and dad. I was brought up in an incredibly positive environment. I saw my mum take herself from basically a broke sheep farmer to a self-made multimillionaire, international businesswoman and published author.
Amazing.
And it's one thing for someone to tell you can achieve anything in life, but to actually be a role model and show you they can achieve anything in life is so powerful. And I guess there's a lot of what I believe and practice now has kind of been in my subconscious for a long time because of what I was exposed to when I was younger. But I think it's only in the last sort of couple of years where it's really started to kick in. And that one question, that what I would say was probably about a week after the Tour de Mont Blanc of last year, where that question started becoming a guiding force in my life.
It's so powerful. It's something, I'm gonna take on. It's a really powerful guiding question. If you live by that philosophy, it's just going to shape you for so much success. I remember having a conversation with a client of mine, and I talked about when we were talking about productivity, for example, And the question I asked was, if you're able to watch CCTV of yourself for the last 24 hours, would you be proud of what you saw? And, since asking that question, I've been living on the basis that I'm imagining this glowing CCTV on me. So I'm thinking, right, I have to live up to this expectation. But that takes it to the next level, the champion's mindset, that gold medal mentality. And I think, living with that 12 months that you had between the two events is incredibly pertinent. With the Olympics on now in Rio, hearing so many of those stories where 4 years ago athletes have given it their best shot, but they've missed out on the medals and they've come back. I know this yesterday. I was watching the GB sailing team. I think the women's sailing team, and they'd missed out 4 years ago, and now they're back and they've taken gold. And I think what you've illustrated there is the importance of never giving up, because again, I've met people who have got so far but not hit the goal, and they've given up. That final 5 yards hasn't been within them, and they've given up due to their fears, or they've judged that they're not good enough. But I think the lesson you've shared there is so powerful that you can make a decision in that moment to go back and go all at it again and commit to the outcome. So I applaud you for the result you've created.
It's interesting what you say there, Dan, because especially when you look at the Olympics and things and what I've done. And I think, often in life, there's that phrase that, you see the glory, but you don't know the story. And the achieving of the goal this year, I went back and completed the Tour de Mont Blanc this year, better for my experiences the year before. But a lot of people who follow my story and sort of know what I do, they often see the social media post or they hear my talk about I achieved the goal, but people don't understand necessarily what goes into that. That it's what you do in private, away from the public eye, that enables you to be recognized for that small fraction of time. And the Olympics is a perfect example. Usain Bolt won the 100 meters in under 10 seconds, and we all tuned in and saw him run. Yet there's 4 years hard work and dedication when nobody's watching that got him into the position to be able to achieve that goal.
Absolutely, day in, day out.
And that's the true test of character, I think, for somebody who wants to achieve success. Are you prepared to do what's required when nobody's there to give you, a pat on the back? There's no one going, oh, aren't you amazing? This is incredible. You've got to be prepared to put in that hard work when the public eye isn't on you. And that was the same for me of my challenge. No one was stood there in the garden shed with me at 5:30 every morning watching me put my training in. And yet, had I not done that, I would not have been able to achieve the goal in the Alps when I went there.
Amazing. So what have been some of the proudest moments on your journey?
It's a difficult one to answer because, I think I'm proud of everything I've achieved. And what I've done over the last 3 years is I've set a series of goals that have enabled me to progress. And each goal is bigger than the goal before. And each one is just enough to stretch me, take me out of my comfort zone and force me to grow. Wow. And again, I look at this whole analogy of sort of a mountain. And I guess, my ultimate goal would be I would love to climb Mount Everest. Yet I wouldn't be able to go and climb Mount Everest tomorrow. But I've set a series of goals over the next 3, 4, 5 years that would enable me to develop into the person who could go and do it. And I think that's what we need. We need a series of goals in life to keep challenging us.
Yes.
So I've been proud of everything I've achieved over the years. And one of the things that gives me great satisfaction is having my little boy who's, about to turn 1. I want to be a role model to him. I want to show him that as he grows up, there's nothing that he can't achieve in this world. And I'm a true believer that anybody can achieve anything they want in life, so long as they've got the right mindset and they're prepared to make whatever sacrifices are required to achieve that goal. And it's interesting, again, something you mentioned earlier about fear. And I believe that a lot of people let fear control their lives.
Absolutely.
And first and foremost, people sometimes don't even attempt something because they're scared of what other people might think. They're scared what happens if I fail. And what this leads to is a situation whereby we're just existing in the world and we're not living our lives. And I always say to people, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is the real deal. You get one shot at life. And it goes by pretty quickly. I'm 33 now, and having had a little boy last year, it's made me realize how quickly time does go. You've got to live life to the absolute full every single day, because you never know when it might be taken away from you. And I always think of fear from the flip side. My fear is, what will happen if I don't do this? What will happen if I just keep doing the same thing day in, day out for the next 40 years? What kind of life will I be living then? And I know it's something we spoke about earlier. And, I want to leave a legacy. I want people to look at my life when I'm gone and say I made an impact. And if it inspires one person or 1,000 people to make a change for the positive and for the better in their life, then I feel like I've achieved one of my goals, and that's to help inspire others through my own actions. Because it's funny, I'm going all over Europe at the moment doing public speaking gigs, and from crowds of anyone from 100 up to 6,000 people, and it's kind of surreal in a way that when I made that decision to get in shape, I never for one moment imagined that it would lead to the life I'm living right now. But I also know that had I not made that decision, I'd be exactly the same place as I was 3 years ago. And I just want to share with people and show people that I'm not a superstar or anything, or, different to anybody else. I'm just an ordinary guy who is, I don't want this to sound arrogant, but achieving extraordinary things because I've got the right mindset to do it. And it's a mindset that anyone can develop with the right time and effort and commitment.
I commend you for that. And, never, I guess it's the kind of, I've got listeners all over the world that listen to this show, but I guess it's a very British mentality to, not claim the full essence of their glory. That moment there, you hesitated to say without being arrogant. There's nothing arrogant about accepting your victories. You have done some extraordinary things. And, I think I respect the humble nature you have. I guess that comes with the British way. But, I'm here to say to people listening to this, be proud. You have said you are proud of your achievements. Be openly proud, because, you are an inspiration to other people. And that's the really key thing. And, it's not just for yourself. It's a selfless act of inspiring other people through your role model behaviors and going out there as a leader. It's a really noble thing to do. And you certainly are inspiring people with the work you're doing. So you touching on fear then, what is the kind of, I'm really interested. I talk a lot about fears on this show. And by the way, the purpose of this show, when I get guests on here, it's not ever designed. And I've had people from all walks of life on this show who have achieved amazing things. It's not about looking up to people. This is about looking into people so that people can see that we're all just human beings who are just doing the things that light us up. And in the act of doing that, inspiring others to go and do the things that light them up. So my question to you, because fear is, as you've touched upon, is a big, big thing that holds many people back. Would you be able to share? Has there been a fear that you've conquered? Has there been a fear that has held you back in the past that you've been able to overcome? And how did you overcome that fear?
I think one of my biggest fears when I started taking on these challenges was the fear of living a small life. And don't get me wrong, I know there's people in this world who are very happy with, doing what they do. But for me, the thought of going through life, living this small life was a scary thought, when I know there's so much out there that we can achieve, that we can do. It's a massive world out there, and there are endless opportunities. So I guess there's, the fear of that has driven me on to sort of to do many things. But in a way, I think one of the things that really drives me, I've failed many times, but I've learned huge valuable lessons from those failures. I think I've learned more, in fact, from my failures than I have from all of my successes. And it's something that keeps pushing me forward. Is I don't like the fear of failure. Nobody likes the fear of failure. And I think some people can have this misconception that successful people are fearless, and no one's fearless. No matter how successful you are, no matter what you achieve in life, there's always things that we all have the same fears. I just think we get better at managing those fears and learning how to overcome them. And you can only do that by practicing and by the doing of things. You don't learn anything from sitting by in life and just watching other people do it. there
Absolutely.
comes a time when you have to step up and, and live life yourself. So I think I'm always trying to overcome that fear of failing, because it makes me want to achieve more. It makes me want to be a better person. It makes me want to be a better dad, a better husband. It makes me want to be better in every aspect of my life and be the best I can possibly be.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched upon, some of your key driving forces. What would you say is ultimately driving you right now when you're thinking about your next adventure? What drives you to move forward to that next adventure? What's really guiding you to keep growing?
Very much that, really, to keep growing. I've achieved a great deal over the last 3 years. When I look at where I came from, I finished my body transformation. I ended up on the front cover as a feature story on the front cover of a health and nutrition magazine. And from there, I kind of kept setting new goals and taking myself forward. And I really just want to find out what the limits of what I can possibly achieve are.
Nice.
Because the only time we ever know what our limits are is by trying to push past them. And I was amazed at how much I've been able to achieve. If somebody had told me 3 years ago at the start of this journey that I would have done all the things I've done this year and be looking forward to what I've got planned for the next 3 years, I would have laughed at them. And I said, that's not possible. But it comes back to that point that I make about stretching yourself and making yourself grow with challenges that take you out of your comfort zone. And the more you can do that, the more that you can start to achieve. So I'm really, really driven now by seeing where this can take me. I've loved the last 3 years, but I think I've literally only just scratched the surface of what I'm really capable of.
Amazing. So what's the kind of vision for the future now for you?
My big goal is, I think it's great to share goals and to be accountable, because, if you have a goal and you keep it to yourself and you're the only person who knows about it, if you don't do what's required or you miss the goal, it's kind of I say it's no big deal. You've only got your conscience to deal with. And if you can deal with that, you think, okay, it's no problem, I didn't achieve it. But if 1,000 people know that you're aiming to achieve a certain goal and you don't do it, people are going to ask you why not. And all of a sudden you're accountable to them. So my big goals, and I have no problem being accountable to this, is I really want to establish myself in the inspirational speaking sort of world.
Yes.
It's something I've really enjoyed doing, not from a point of view of, oh, look at me, I'm on stage in front of people, but because the more I talk and the more feedback I get, I realize now that what I'm doing is inspiring other people.
Absolutely.
And that's really touching. And I spoke in Ireland recently, and I had a lady come up to me, and she said that her nephew had been watching some of my online videos and seen some of my content and seen my story, and it had really inspired him to make a change in his own life, whereby he was getting in with the wrong crowd, getting mixed up in drinking and drugs. And he saw my body transformation and some videos afterwards, and he just made a decision there and then that he was going to start changing his life and get himself back on the straight and narrow. And that really touched me and moved me. And I just suddenly thought, if I can inspire other people like that, then it's brilliant. And when I started on my journey, it was very much to see how far I could take myself, what I could do for myself. And now I realize that I can do a great deal for other people as well, which is why I really want to sort of get into the public speaking a lot more. But from a physical point of view, I've got something quite mad, audacious, crazy planned for next year. And it involves a lot of cycling.
Okay.
So this year I've been doing a series of sort of 1-day bike races. I'm heading off to the Alps again next week to do a 7-day race right through the middle of the Alps. And again, I come back to this point about your goals needing to keep stretching you and moving you on. So next year, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could cycle the entire Tour de France route?
Wow.
And I know there's companies who you can do it for charity. You can do it 1 day ahead. There's a company who does it a week ahead of the actual race. And then I thought to myself, well, if I do that next year, then I'm going to need to go back and do that, plus the Vuelta a España, plus the Giro d'Italia, because there's 3 grand tours. And I thought to myself, well, why not just do all 3 next year?
Wow.
So I'm in the process at the moment. I'm talking to a couple of companies, looking at sponsorship ideas. But basically next year, I'm to be doing the full Giro d'Italia. I've either on the day of the official race, but a lot earlier in the day or the day before, and the same for the Tour de France and the same for the Vuelta a España. So I'll be cycling in excess of 12,000 kilometers. All over Europe, the toughest 3 bike races in the world. It's mad, I know it is, but that's me. It's an all or nothing mentality. You know, that's going to be an incredible test of my physical and mental strength. And it's something I'm building towards already. And, you know, just talking about it now is going to be excited for it. And
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you. So, right, I want to dig into something here because this is important. Now, that is a massive, as I think Darren Hardy says, big hairy ass audacious skull. I can't remember who says that. It's a big goal. But I want to remind people listening to this right now and watching this on Facebook Live that, you know, this conversation began with an initial simple I guess even the simple transformation at the beginning wasn't simple when it was the first thing you took on, you know. But what I want people to get from this is that's a massive goal, but it's taken so many steps. You know, we used the analogy of mountains earlier. You know, the first mountain doesn't have to be Everest. You know, and I guess when you started this journey, you may not have even been aware of these routes and this opportunity that you have. So, what would you say, you know, to someone listening who's thinking about their big goals in terms of how do they, you know, because you're very methodical in terms of how you approach your growth. How does someone start out if they've, you know, got this big vision for their life or their business? What's the first thing someone should do when they're first thinking about their future? I mean, and what were you thinking about when, you know, you shared at the beginning the story about your own initial transformation? Where should someone start?
I think just to answer the last little bit of that question very quickly, you know, when I started my own story, I honestly didn't think of anything more than proving my friend wrong and getting into really good shape.
Yeah.
That was literally all it started as. And like I said, you know, I'd made a decision to get into shape. And I think on that, just very quickly, you know, when you make a decision in life to change something or to do something, you might not know the consequences of that decision for, you know, months, years to come. But in changing in making that decision, you're changing the course of your life. And it's only now looking back that I realized that how powerful that decision was. And it might be another 5 years before I really see the full consequences of that. So the first thing I would encourage people to do is make a decision, put a marker down and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going. This is what I want to achieve. And trust that you might not know exactly how you're going to get there to start off with, but by making that decision, you alter the course of your life forever.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then in terms of my advice, my advice to people is it comes back to this analogy from the mountain, the goal setting. You know, have a big goal. You might already be able to see 10 years into the future and say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. You know, I want to climb Everest. I want to earn £10,000 a month. And whatever your goal is, know what the end goal is and then break it down and come back from the end point. And by doing so, you can break it down and know what you need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to work towards that goal. And another question that I kind of ask myself at times is, it's easy when you've got a big goal you're working towards, you can get distracted from time to time. It's easy to sort of, you know, lose focus. And I think you need to ask yourself on a regular basis, is what I'm doing moving me towards my goal? And if the answer is yes, great, carry on doing it. And if the answer is no, stop doing it. And by doing that over a period of time, you start to weed out the activities, the habits, the behaviors in your life that are holding you back from achieving greatness. Because I honestly believe we can all achieve greatness in this world. So long as we start, A, we believe it, and B, we start taking on and wanting to make a change. Prepared to make a change, then obviously nothing will change in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many powerful lessons in there. You know, firstly, you know, a great mentor of mine, Tony Robbins, he says, you know, your destiny is shaped in the moment of decisions that you make, and you're spot on with that. And I think the other piece, it's a lesson I've learned the hard way in my life. You know, I've done all the personality tests or whatnot to really trying to to really kind of become self-aware of my own strengths and weaknesses. And one of the things that I have is, which is a blessing, is this visionary thinking. I consider myself to be a big thinker, which means I can see the big picture, but I really struggle, or have struggled in the past, to chunk that down into the manageable milestones. So, my brain's thinking about the Everest, but it's not thinking about the hill at the end of my road. So to be able to, as you say, create those milestones is so important. And also, when you're thinking about the long-term future of where you want to head in terms of the decisions you're making, are they taking you towards that long-term vision? Because having experience in the corporate world, a lot of people in the corporate world make decisions based upon short-term objectives, which aren't necessarily aligned with their long-term goals. So I think it's so important to always have that end in mind about where you're going. And when you are making those decisions about what you should do next, are they taking you towards that big, hairy-ass, audacious goal that you want to do in the future? But as you've perfectly well illustrated in this conversation, sometimes you have to just start taking the first step. The first step to your transformation and the first step to where you are now is that first initial decision that you made. And you're not necessarily going to see Everest to begin with. You might not even be aware that it's there. Your Everest is yet to be discovered, potentially, for many people. And even for yourself and what you're doing now, you'll do this next thing. And something that's completely inconceivable is probably out there that you'll probably end up doing in 10 years' time. You and I will speak in 10 years' time. That thing.
But you know what? That really excites me to know that there's things out there that I don't even know about that I could potentially go and do. Is so exciting because, like I said, this world is full of opportunity, and some of them we don't even know about at the moment. And it's only by taking on things that we do know about that we start to open doors and find out about other options that are available to us in this world.
Absolutely. And the other point I picked up from what you were saying is, it's all very well. And in fact, just today I had a conversation with someone, and there's two kind of gauges I use. And the one question I asked was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to doing what you say you want to do? And the answer was 9.5. And I said, okay, I can take that. That's high enough. A lot of people like to avoid using 10. And then I asked the next question, the next gauge. I said, how much do you believe what you're trying to do is possible for you? And the answer was below a 6. So I said, therein lies the problem. And I think having the self-belief, the belief that it's possible for you, is probably the most powerful thing, because, our fears and our limiting thoughts, our self-doubt is what stands in the way of many, many things. But, taking that first step to defy those fears is so important. And, like you say,
something you've just said there. Sorry, just jump in, but just
sure.
quickly before I forget. And something that you've said there. That's the thing. People need to take that first step, and I think for me, belief is something that's built up over time. I didn't just wake up one day and think, I believe I can do this, and that's where it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about having smaller sub goals. Because what happens is when you achieve the little goal, it gives you confidence, it gives you belief, and you can go on to achieve something a bit bigger. And by constantly achieving smaller goals, I say smaller, they're small in comparison to your grand vision. I mean, they still might be quite a sizable thing, but in every goal that you achieve in life, you give yourself belief that you can achieve more. And that's why I think people just need to just start doing.
Yes.
About earlier about, often we wait for what we conceive to be the perfect time, or we've got more expertise, or, we're more qualified to do something. And the reality is that the right time is now.
Yes.
The right time to take action is this moment, is to make a decision to start taking action now. And that you're not going to know everything straight away. No matter what you want to do, what you want to achieve in life, you're not going to have every single tool at your disposal. But what you will have is enough to get started and get you on the path to where you want to be.
Absolutely. Earlier on this morning, we were talking about micro steps. Even when you break down the journey up the mountain to those base camps, it's still 1 foot after the other towards each base camp. Every micro step is 1 step of progress towards your ultimate Everest. I think that's such an important point. So I really want to, we talked a lot about kind of some of your success principles. What are some of the habits and rituals that you live by on a daily basis that support you and your goals?
Personal development's a massive one for me. I read a lot. I listen to a lot. Every morning when I'm out in the shed on my bike, I used to just listen to music, and then I suddenly thought, hang on, I'm missing an opportunity here. So I listen to a lot of personal development, and a whole different variety of stuff as well. There's some really interesting material out there that can help shape your own thoughts and open your mind to this world of possibility. And you know, I've got a few favorites within that. I think Les Brown is absolutely brilliant. At 5:30 in the morning, it's nothing like a bit of Les Brown to get your mind going.
Yeah.
But I think that's really important. A lot of people focus on their physical health, but they don't focus on the mental side of things. And I'm not talking about mental health issues, but I'm just talking about exercising your mind. Um, you know, if you just wake up every morning and start reading the paper, you start looking at the news, you start to give your brain what I would generally say is negative thoughts, because most of what you hear on the radio, most of what you see in the paper isn't exactly good news. And I think first thing in the morning, you need to start your day off on a positive note. And so I'll listen to personal development every morning on the bike. I also follow that up with watching a couple of little short videos on YouTube. There's some great sort of motivational videos out there just to get yourself off on the right foot in the day. If you're starting the day full of positivity, you're on to a winner straight away. The other thing is the physical exercise. I exercise every day because yes, I need to do it for the challenges I do, but also, again, it gives you that boost of endorphins. You feel good about things. It sets me up for a perfect day ahead. So they're two of the things that I really try and focus on every day. And I think for me, and again, this was something you and I touched on earlier, it's about the only person you're competing with, the only person you're trying to be better than in this world is yourself. And that just comes down to a daily progress to me. Am I going to bed tonight better than I was last night? Have I improved? What have I done today to move myself forward in life? And that's all you need to do. You need to focus about being the best possible version of yourself. And I think in the world we live in today, with this vast array of social media channels, and people get caught up in comparing themselves to other people. And I did it when I did my body transformation. I was getting really close to my goal. I got down to about 9% body fat. Looking back now, I realized how good I looked. But at the time, all I could do was look at the guys who were already on the front of magazines going, I don't look like that. And I know it sounds crazy. And even when I say it to you now, it sounds stupid because, I know that most people would do anything to look like I did there. But here I was thinking, I don't look like that. And I think what happens when you do that is you forget how far you've come.
Yeah.
And it's as much about the journey in life as it is about the end destination. And often it's the person we have to become to achieve the goal that's more important than the goal itself. And I know that's not a new a new sort of way of thinking, but it's so true. The person I'm going to have to become to be able to climb Mount Everest, the person I'm going to have to become to do these challenges next year will impact on every other aspect of my life. It's the person that achieves those goals will have positive impacts elsewhere in life. And just coming back to that comparison thing, it's difficult sometimes because we always follow these people on Facebook and Twitter and various other social channels where we aspire to be like other people. And I always think, take inspiration from other people, take courage from other people's stories, be inspired by them, but write your own story. This is your life. This is nobody else's life. You get one shot to write your book. Make sure it's the best you can possibly be. And just don't look back in 20, 30, 40 years time going, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that, because it will be too late by then.
Absolutely. There's the old phrase that comparison is the thief of all joy. And, it, like you say, we live in a world where it's so prevalent. You can just, the click of a button, you're immersed in other people's lives. And, if you're pursuing a goal and there's people ahead of you and you see that, you can either be inspired by or you can be intimidated by what you see. And I think inspiration is key. And of course, if there are people on the same journey as you that have achieved the things that you want to achieve, They've left a trail of destruction to get there. You know, they've been through the steps, they've been through the milestones, they've climbed the mountains, and you can learn the steps and the strategies to get where they've got. But if you allow their point in the journey to intimidate you, then you will never get further forward. You have to allow it to inspire you and take the lessons. And I remember going when I was at university. I remember walking down the street, and there was this guy who walked out of this really nice Ferrari, and I love cars. And my friend said something pretty damn well insulting about the driver of that Ferrari, knowing nothing about him. And that to me was someone who was intimidated by someone else's success rather than inspired by it. I looked at that and thought, I'm going to have a car like that one day. I didn't think that intimidates me and that manifests it in some aggressive outburst around what they think about that individual. You have to be inspired by other people. And I have another philosophy. You know, you talk about morning routine and the things you do. I have this rule, which is to create before I consume. Because, you know, if you jump straight on Facebook in the morning, you start seeing all these other things that other people are doing, that comparison kicks in. You know, you put yourself in that state of mind, that the similar state of mind, in fact, that you were saying about the negative state of mind that you may have by watching the news. So yeah, I live by create before I consume. I do something positive for me or for my business before I even allow myself to let other information in, unless it's selected deliberately, whether it's an audio book, a motivational video, or, you know, an actual physical book. You know, they still exist.
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny, you know, there's, you know, I look at my son now. I know I digressed a little bit, but he's going to grow up in such a different world to the one that you and I grew up in. You know, everything's on computers and emails. And, you know, I was talking to someone today about, you know, people are going to not know how to write in 10, 20 years time because they're not going to need to. And anyway, I digress on that.
Yeah. So you talked about your big vision. What is the legacy you want to leave in this world?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that wasn't. By the way, that wasn't in the show notes I gave poor Marcus.
Yeah, no, I know. What's the legacy? I want to be seen as someone who lived life to the full, who went out there and gave it absolutely everything. And yes, along the way, there's setbacks and failures and disappointments, but ultimately, you know, that I lived a big life, that I went out there and grabbed life by the scruff of the neck and gave it my absolute all. And I guess also, you know, I'm a dad now, and it changes a lot, really. And it's difficult to explain to anyone who doesn't have children, but there's something that just changes, and it's for the better, it's for the good. But like I said, I want to show my little boy and future children that anything really is possible in this world, and that, you know, I want to be a role model to people. I want to be a role model to my children, to my family, and through my own actions, just help other people realize that they can achieve so much more in life. Yeah, I mean, just talking about it now really makes me want to sort of jump up out of the chair and go and get on with things and just do more, because I always think no matter how much you're doing, no matter how much you're contributing, there's always more that can be done. You can always give more, you can always do more to better yourself and to help others. And I guess that's a real key for me. It's helping others, and through raising money for charity and the inspiration side, it's giving other people hope as well, that they can do something. And because it comes back to that thing that, you know, I always think if I can do it, you can do it. And you talked earlier about sort of role models and things and being able to relate to things. And I think it's really interesting. I always use Richard Branson as an example in this sense, that if you're starting your own business, you know, it's difficult to relate to someone like Richard Branson and the life he's done, because yes, whilst he started where you are, he's so far removed from what you're doing now. It's difficult to relate to him. And I think if you've got someone who's just a little bit further ahead of you in their journey, but they're doing the same thing as you, it's much easier to relate to them, because they're not so far ahead that it's an impossible thought to be, I can be like them. And that's where I like to think, you know, as just an ordinary guy doing what I'm doing, that I can offer that inspiration to people, because I'm a couple of years into this journey, and I'm just like everybody else. I'm your average guy just doing what I do. And I hope people can take inspiration from that and think I can do that as well.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting you make that point, actually, because about Richard Branson specifically. It's a goal of mine to have Richard on the show. And if you're listening to this and you know him personally, please do hook me up. But I'm sure, looking at Richard, he's an ordinary guy who's done extraordinary things as well. And I'd like to think that if I had him on the show, he would say the same thing. And I've analyzed. I spend a lot of my time analyzing some of the greats of the world. That's part of what I do, to kind of dissect the lessons. And I think one of the key things when you look at someone like Richard Branson is that, just like Marcus today, it started with a decision. Everything that has happened for Richard Branson, all of the empire that he's built, he came from an ordinary background and he made an ordinary decision, but that ordinary decision resulted in something spectacular. And I think that's a message I want people to take away. But I thoroughly agree with you in terms of, when you're looking for people to surround yourself with that can help you move forward, those people who are on the same journey of you can make such a big difference. So Marcus,
go on. Sorry.
No, carry on, please.
No, I was just gonna say something, but I literally, as you cut in, my sort of mind went a bit blank. So go on, ask me your question and save me from.
We've become incredibly British at being very polite with each other. Let's move into the final round. I've got 3 power questions for you to finish the show today. My first question to you, and all 3 of these are designed to really extract some really powerful lessons in themselves. So the first question is, if you could speak to your younger self, and you can imagine what age you would want to go back to speak to, whether it's a 15-year-old self or 20-year-old self. If you were to go back to speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you would give that younger version of you?
Some questions you get asked, you sort of have to sit and think about, and other questions you just instinctively know the answer. And if I'm being completely honest with myself here, the age I'd go back to is about 17, 18. And I was playing a high level of rugby. I was playing for Wales under 18s and under 19s. I played in a Junior Rugby World Cup. I left school playing a high level of rugby, and I went to university, and I don't think I really understood the opportunity I had in my hands. And I kind of drifted a bit, and I lost my focus and let other things sort of come in. And I would have just gone back and said to my younger self, again, this whole thing, if you get one shot at life, don't mess it up. And I don't believe that I messed my life up, but I do believe maybe I missed an opportunity to go on and achieve something in that sense. But that's one sort of area. And more than anything, just to go back to my younger self, was I wouldn't change my life, because ultimately the life I've led, every decision I've made, every experience I've had has led me to where I am now. And I love my life right now. I love what I'm doing. But maybe if I was to give myself a bit of advice, it would be to have started on this journey a bit sooner, in terms of this journey of personal development, and this journey of seeing how far I can take myself. Because I look at myself now, I'm 33, and I think, wow, I've achieved a lot in these last 3 years. And yes, I did some great and crazy travels and adventures in the years before I turned 30, but not with this real focus that I've got now. And I would go back to, when I was younger, sort of early 20s, and said, get focused and get busy doing what it is that's really important to you now, and identify what it is. What is it that's important to you in life, and what are you prepared to do to achieve that?
Amazing. That's some powerful.
I think a lot of people go through life, and I did it myself, where maybe we know deep down what it is we want to achieve, and it comes back to this fear where we let those fears and other people's limiting beliefs and our own preconceived ideas stop us from really doing what we want to do. And I think once you identify what it is you really want to do in life, and you have a clear focus, a clear vision of where you want to go, you will make the sacrifices that are required to get there. And again, I don't even think they're sacrifices. You just do what's necessary, because that's the life that you have chosen. That's the path that you're on. And I look at my life now compared to 3 years ago, and there's certain people I don't see so much anymore. There's certain things I don't do so much anymore, but I don't see them as sacrifices, because the things are amazing, and I love everything that I do at the moment.
Awesome.
But ultimately, I know where I'm going in life. I know what my purpose is. I know what my vision is. I know what I want to achieve, and whether it takes me 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, I know I'm going to get there, and that's the main thing.
Absolutely. And I think I've been through that experience where I honestly think that a lot of people in this world do know what they really want. They just haven't allowed themselves to accept it. And I've been in the position where I knew what I wanted, but my fear prevented me from going after it. So I'd do all this busy stuff that prevented me from going after it. But my message to people listening to this is trust your intuition and just go for it. Go all in on you.
And that's where having a question, like a guiding question for your life, is really important, because if you know what it is you want to achieve, and then you have this question, like this champion's question, you're going to get to where you want to go. You're going to not let the thoughts of other people prevent you from doing it. You're not going to let your past shortcomings prevent you from doing it, because if you ask yourself that question, what would a champion do? That mindset is going to keep driving you towards where you want to be. And it's going to tell you to ignore the fears, overcome the fears, stop listening to people who have got small mentalities, who don't have the belief in you because of their own shortcomings in life. Believe in yourself, believe that you can achieve a greatness, and just go after it.
Awesome. So, Marcus, you've spoken about personal development. My next question is, what's the most impactful book, either business or personal development, you've ever read?
Again, a good question. There's 2 or 3 really good ones. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So for me at the moment, there's a Les Brown, I think it's called The Power of Purpose, that I've been listening to, which is phenomenal. I mean, other people's thoughts and philosophies can help shape who you are. And if I look at who I've started to become and my beliefs, then a lot of influence I've had is definitely from Les Brown. Also, Tony Robbins. I know great idol, or someone you look up to greatly and take a lot of inspiration from, is the same with me. Anything by Tony Robbins, really. I was really fortunate to see a live recording of his from last year at an Eric Worre event, which was fantastic and just gave me so much energy. And I think you can't go far wrong with Les Brown and Tony Robbins.
Absolutely. Sorry, we just had a little bit of feedback on the line there. That's okay. So the final question for you is, what does being unstoppable mean to you?
Being unstoppable to me, on a very personal level, it ties in with my own philosophy. And I've got this little motto in life, and it dates back to when I did my first bungee jump. And it's, why live life on the edge when you can jump off it? People have this idea, if you're living life on the edge, you're alive, you're out there, and well, just jump off it and see what happens, because then you really have to sort of get your wings and fly. And for me, being unstoppable now is continuing this journey, is just breaking down the boundaries that are there, and proving to myself and to other people that there's no limit to what we can achieve. So that to me is being unstoppable.
Awesome. And I've had my own...
And can I just quickly say as well, I believe that unstoppable attitude and mentality comes in any walk of life. And yes, I'm doing it through my medium of great challenges, adventures, and taking on all of what I do. But same mindset, the same lessons, the same mentality to absolutely anything, from what I do all the way through to building your own business and going after what's important in your life. So it's not just a case of, that's great if you're an adventurer. It's anyone can learn from this. Anyone can have that mentality to achieve their goals.
Absolutely. So the last thing for us to do, Marcus, is I want to thank you for being an incredible guest today on today's show and unleashing your greatness and sharing what it means to be unstoppable with the Unstoppable podcast today. For everyone listening today or watching live, what is the best way for people to find out about your adventures and stay in touch with what you're doing?
First of all, can I just say as well, Dan, thanks very much for having me on today. It's been great to share a little bit of my insight and my beliefs and, have this chat with you. So thanks for the opportunity.
My pleasure.
The best way to sort of follow what I'm doing is I've got my website, which is marcusleach.co.uk. And that kind of gives you a bit more of my backstory as well as about what's going on at the moment. I'm on Twitter at Marcus Leach Food because I do a lot of sort of healthy food side of things. But that's also mindset stuff on there as well. That's just the Twitter handle. Yeah. And then on Facebook is Marcus Leach and also Marcus Leach Food. And then I guess, just as sort of if anyone's out there looking for an inspirational speaker or likes what they've heard today on this podcast, then, I am doing a lot of inspirational speaking throughout Europe, and also looking to collaborate with anybody from a sponsorship media coverage point of view for those 3 big challenges I've got next year.
Awesome stuff. Marcus, thank you again for rocking the show today. I've really enjoyed rocking the mic with you. Some amazing lessons. So all that needs to be said is for the audience now is to go out there, unleash your greatness, make your impact in the world and live your ultimate life. Thanks again, Marcus.
Thanks very much, Dan.
Folks, are you ready to go out there to climb your mountain and live your adventure? I, for one, am incredibly inspired by Marcus's story and his journey of transformation, and I hope that you are too. What are some of the big mountains you are working on right now? Come and join us in the Unstoppable Mastermind group on Facebook. You'll be directed to the group when you download your 50 lessons document over at danjgregory.com/50 lessons. That's 50 lessons. I mentioned that at the beginning of the show, and it's important that you go over and grab that, and you can access the Unstoppable Mastermind for free too. So grab your PDF, come and share your adventurous goals in the group, and get connected with the Unstoppable tribe. I've got some absolutely mega guests coming up for you over the coming weeks, but I won't spoil the secrets just yet. But I'll be back this Monday with another solo round of the Unstoppable podcast, so tune in bright and early for a fresh dose of inspiration. Until next time, as always, go out there, unleash your greatness, build your empire, make your impact, and live your ultimate life. You are unstoppable.